And for more on how Malaysia's new restrictions could affect Israel, we're joined by Dr. James M Dorsey. He is adjunct senior fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Dr. Dorsey, now earlier we spoke to our Malaysian correspondent. She said what Mr. Anwar Ibrahim is doing is he's walking the talk. He has been vocal, he has been consistent, and he's walking the talk. The question is, why is he walking that talk right now?
This is a way for Anwar Ibrahim to cater to domestic public opinion. There have been demands for a boycott of Israeli shipping in Malaysia for more than a decade. Last June, dock workers were refusing to unload a Israeli vessel. And it comes at a time that the government has cracked down on one of the major fundraising arms of Hamas in Malaysia.
Right. If you could give us a few more details on that and try to tie that in the larger context of why Mr. Anwar is needing to balance different demands from different groups, putting different kinds of pressure on him, and how this crackdown on shipping to Israel tries to meet, in his way, all these different pressures.
I think one's got to keep in mind that Malaysian public opinion is broadly supportive of Palestine and condemns Israel certainly for what is happening in the Gaza Strip at the moment. In addition to that, Malaysia is under pressure from the United States to cut back on the representation of Hamas in Malaysia. Malaysia is one of the few countries where Hamas has a semi-official presence. Recently, you saw an investigation being launched by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission against a Malaysian NGO, the Aman Palestine, that raises funds for Hamas. The investigation is on charge of financial irregularity. So this is essentially by conceding to demands that have been long-standing for a boycott of Israeli shipping. The government can demonstrate solidarity with Palestine and with the Palestinians at a very low political or economic cost.
All right, so you would agree with Mr. Anwar when he says this would come at relatively little economic cost to the country's economy. And of course, as you mentioned, it would come at no political cost because it is in fact meeting a great deal of domestic pressure for him to do more for the Palestinian cause.
It will obviously not ingratiate Anwar Ibrahim with Western countries and with particularly the United States. But shipping to Malaysia, particularly to the port of Port Klang, is far and few between. The next vessel scheduled to arrive in Port Klang is only supposed to arrive on February 18 of next year. That vessel will probably, with the current ban, have to be rerouted. But it is an indication of just how infrequent Israeli-related vessels dock in Malaysian ports.
All right. On the question of consumer boycotts related to, I suppose, unhappiness with what's happening in Gaza. So we have seen, for example, McDonald's Egypt losing 70% of its business because of local boycotts. Malaysia and Indonesia as well, you see people calling for consumer boycotts of McDonald's because McDonald's Israel offered to give meals to the IDF. Now, these things tend to hit local franchisees rather than the global headquarters. So would you say there's any kind of sound economic rationale for consumer boycotts actually putting pressure, if you should want to, on Israel to stop its actions in Gaza?
Well, first of all, as you correctly say, the economic boycotts hit primarily local business because these are franchises that are locally owned and that operate under an American brand, but the American brand only earns money off the licensing of its brand. I think the thing to keep in mind here is that boycott as such really is not a major issue in the Gaza conflict. None of the Arab states that have diplomatic relations with Israel have broken off those relationships. Arab oil producers have ruled out the possibility of an oil boycott and have not further imposed economic sanctions on Israel because of the conduct of its war in Gaza. So this is really much more of a symbolic act and a political act rather than an economic one.
All right, a final question on whether this is also a symbolic and political act. Right now, we're seeing disruptions to shipping to Israel through the Red Sea because companies fear attacks by Yemen, by Houthi rebels. Now, and at this point, we've got Malaysia specifically saying it's not shipping to Israel, it's stopping Israeli flagships, stopping even in Malaysian ports. Is there any connection in terms of timing and purpose we might want to draw between these two seemingly disconnected events?
I would argue that that the two have everything to do with each other. What the Houthi attacks on shipping in the Gulf, on Israel-related shipping in the Gulf, does for Malaysia is give the government a cover to impose the ban as it has. It falls into line, even though this is a government and it's doing it for political rather than economic reasons. Nonetheless, it falls in line with 7 of the world's major shipping companies saying that they either will not ship to Israel or will not ship through the Gulf and will reroute their vessels around the Cape of Hope. So that's an obvious environment in which the government of Malaysia can declare a boycott of Israeli or a ban on Israeli shipping with no real consequence.
All right. Thanks for that, Dr. James M Dorsey from the Rajaratnam School of International Studies.